On a storm-battered Friday night, Nia Roberts wiped down the last booth of her shift when she noticed what the man in the expensive black coat had left behind. He'd sat silent for over an hour, barely touched his coffee, then vanished into the rain without leaving a single dollar. Just a blank tip line and a folded note hidden beneath his cup. When Nia opened it, sharp handwriting spelled out an invitation that made her breath catch. Come to Harbour Point Tower. Tomorrow. 9 a.m. Ask for Lucas Cannon. The billionaire shipping magnate. A man who could buy her entire neighborhood without blinking. He'd left her nothing, and everything. Her hands trembled as she looked toward the rain-swept windows, wondering how a stranger knew her name, and what kind of trap or miracle waited on that 42nd floor. Welcome to Life in Stories, where every tale reminds us that kindness changes everything. If these stories touch your heart, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss one. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I love connecting with you all. Now, let's begin. The storm had already swallowed half the coast by the time Nia Roberts pushed open the back door of Harbourlight Cafe. Wind howled through the narrow street like something wounded, rattling metal signs and hurling newspapers against brick walls. Rain came sideways, cold and relentless, soaking through her jacket before she could even reach the awning. She shook water from her braids, tied her apron with practiced efficiency, and forced herself to breathe. Inside, warmth wrapped around her, the hiss of espresso machines, the low hum of conversation, the smell of fresh coffee and butter melting on toast. Friday nights were always like this, fishermen tracking seawater across the floors, college students huddled over shared pastries, elderly couples claiming their usual corner booths. Nia knew them all by name. She remembered their stories, their orders, their grief and joy. She brought kindness the way other people brought breath, naturally, quietly, without expecting anything in return. She was good at it. Being gentle. Being patient. Even when exhaustion gnawed at her bones. Tonight, that exhaustion felt heavier than usual. Alma had woken 3 times the night before, gasping for air, her small chest heaving with effort. The generic inhaler barely touched the edges of her asthma anymore. The doctor had been clear. Alma needed the stronger medication, the specialist visits, the monitoring equipment. All of it far beyond what Nia could afford, even with double shifts and tips that sometimes felt like charity. She moved through the cafe on autopilot, refilling coffee, clearing plates, offering smiles she didn't fully feel. The storm battered the windows. The lights flickered once, twice, then held. At 8:12 p.m., the door opened. And everything shifted. The man who stepped inside didn't belong here. His coat was cut from black fabric that seemed to drink the light, tailored so perfectly it moved like shadow. His shoes gleamed despite the storm. He carried himself with the kind of quiet authority that made people step aside without thinking. A few customers whispered. Even the cook glanced up from the grill. Nia grabbed her notepad and approached. "Welcome to Harbourlight," she said softly. "What can I get you?" He looked up slowly. His eyes were grey, cool, assessing, intelligent in a way that felt almost dangerous. But beneath the calm, she saw something else. Something weary. Something that recognized exhaustion because it lived there too. "Just coffee," he said. His voice was smooth, controlled. "No sugar." She brought it within minutes. He nodded once but didn't drink. For over an hour, he sat motionless in the corner booth. No phone. No book. No laptop. Just stillness, like a man waiting for something to unravel, or perhaps already watching it fall apart. Nia caught herself glancing his way more than once, sensing the weight he carried, the way his shoulders held tension even in rest. She'd seen that look before. In her own mirror. When he finally stood, he left cash on the table for the coffee and walked toward the door without a word. Nia approached to clear the booth. The receipt sat face down. She flipped it over. The tip line was blank. 0. A small sting of disappointment hit her chest. Not anger. She'd learned long ago that anger was a luxury she couldn't afford, but something quieter. Sadness, maybe. She had sensed depth in him, something troubled and human beneath the expensive exterior. And still, he'd given nothing. Then she lifted his coffee mug. Her breath caught. Beneath the cup sat a folded note, her name written on the outside in sharp, elegant strokes. Asterisk for Nia. Asterisk. She looked toward the door. He was already gone, swallowed by rain and shadow. Hands trembling, she unfolded the paper. Asterisk if you want to change your life. Come to Harbour Point Tower. Tomorrow. 9 a.m. 42nd floor. Ask for Lucas Cannon. This is not pity. Asterisk. Her stomach dropped. Everyone knew that name. Lucas Cannon, the billionaire shipping magnate whose empire owned half the harbor's cargo routes. Powerful. Ruthless. Mysterious. A man who built fortunes and crushed competitors without hesitation. His face occasionally appeared in business journals, always unsmiling, always distant. Why would someone like him leave a note for a waitress? How did he know her name? Was this a trap? A scam? Some cruel joke? She didn't sleep that night. She sat beside Alma's bed, stroking her daughter's curls as the little girl wheezed in her sleep. Every labored breath scraped Nia's soul raw. The inhaler sat on the nightstand, nearly empty, barely effective. The stronger one Alma truly needed cost almost $200. $200 that might as well have been $2,000. She thought of the note. Of the man in the black coat. Of the storm outside and the one raging inside her chest. By sunrise, fear told her not to go. Rich people didn't change the lives of women like her. Not without wanting something in return. But Alma woke coughing again, sharp, panicked sounds that stole the air from the room. Decision made. At 8:20 a.m., Nia put on her cleanest blouse, braided her hair tight, kissed Alma goodbye at Mrs. Thompson's apartment, and boarded the bus to Harbour Point Tower. The building rose like a glass mountain over the city, gleaming and untouchable. She stepped into the elevator. The doors closed. The doors closed. And everything changed. The lobby of Harbour Point Tower smelled like marble and money. Nia's worn sneakers squeaked against polished floors so clean she could see her reflection. Tired eyes, nervous posture, a woman who didn't belong. Chandeliers hung overhead like frozen waterfalls. Business people in tailored suits moved past her without a glance, their conversations filled with numbers she couldn't comprehend. She approached the reception desk, her throat dry. "I'm here to see Lucas Cannon," she said quietly. The receptionist's fingers froze over her keyboard. Her eyes widened slightly as she looked Nia up and down, taking in the modest blouse, the carefully braided hair, the hands still rough from years of clearing tables. "Your name?" "Nia Roberts." The woman's expression shifted from skepticism to something closer to shock. She picked up the phone, spoke in hushed tones, then hung up slowly. "Mr. Cannon is waiting for you," she said, her voice careful now. "Someone will escort you up." That sentence alone made the ground tilt beneath Nia's feet. A young man in a crisp grey suit appeared within moments. He didn't introduce himself, just gestured toward the elevators with practiced efficiency. They rode in silence to the 42nd floor, the city shrinking below them until the harbour spread out like a blueprint. Ships, cranes, steel docks stretching toward the horizon. The hallway was glass and steel, lined with massive photographs. Titanic cargo ships cutting through violent waves, workers silhouetted against sunrises, containers stacked like building blocks toward the sky. Everything here spoke of power, control, empires built from nothing. The assistant stopped before a massive oak door. "Be honest with him," he whispered, his voice suddenly human. "He hates polished lies." Then he opened the door and stepped aside. Lucas Cannon stood facing a panoramic window, hands clasped behind his back. The city's harbour sprawled below him in all its chaotic beauty. Cranes moving like metal giants, ships drifting through morning fog, waves churning endlessly against concrete barriers. He turned as she entered. "Ms. Roberts," he said smoothly. "Thank you for coming." She swallowed hard. "I wasn't sure I should." "That's reasonable," he replied. "Most people think my invitations come with hooks. This one does not." He gestured toward a leather chair positioned before his desk. She remained standing, her pulse hammering in her ears. His gaze flickered, something like approval crossed his face. "I left you a $0 tip for a reason," he began, his voice calm but deliberate. Nia's jaw tightened. "To insult me." To see how you treated someone who gave you nothing, he said quietly. And you treated me with dignity, with patience, with respect. You do that with everyone. You were watching me. For over an hour. Why? His expression shifted, something raw and human breaking through the polished exterior. Because you remind me of my sister. Her breath stilled. He continued, his voice dropping into something almost tender. She worked in a diner. Not unlike yours. She hid it from the world because she didn't want people thinking she lived off my wealth. She had her own life, her own pride. And she had a gift. She could see people. Really see them. The ones who were breaking. The ones who needed kindness more than anything else. His jaw tightened, muscles working beneath the surface. One night, she helped a man who was falling apart. Talked him down from something dark. Gave him coffee, listened, made him feel human again. He left that diner alive because of her. Lucas turned back toward the window, his silhouette stark against the glass. A year later, that same man returned in a drug-fueled rage. She tried to help him again. She didn't survive. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. I'm so sorry, Nia whispered. She told me something once, Lucas said softly, still facing the harbor. Some people give kindness even when they are empty. Those people hold the world together. Last night, I saw her in you. Nia looked down, overwhelmed by the weight of his grief, his hope, his impossible expectations. I don't understand, she said. What do you want from me? He slid a thick folder across the desk toward her. Inside were architectural renderings, budget projections, program outlines, all stamped with a single title. Asterisk the Harbor Youth Wellness Initiative. Asterisk millions of dollars dedicated to children with chronic illnesses, families drowning in medical debt, community clinics designed to prevent tragedies like his sister's. You want me to work on this? She asked, her voice barely audible. No, he said, turning to face her fully. I want you to run it. Her heart nearly stopped. I'm a waitress. You are the only person in this city doing meaningful work every single day, he said firmly. You just don't get credit for it. She stared at the folder, then at him, searching for the catch, the trap, the strings attached. But why me? His eyes softened for the first time since she'd entered. Because you see people. And because my sister deserved someone who saw her too. Her throat tightened. Alma's coughing echoed in her mind, sharp, desperate sounds that haunted her even in daylight. The bills stacked on her kitchen counter. The pharmacist's apologetic face when she couldn't afford the medication. The night spent awake, terrified her daughter would stop breathing. I need time, she whispered. You have it, he said gently. But Nia, some chances don't come twice. She left the office clutching the folder to her chest like a life raft. The elevator ride down felt endless. Outside, the storm had passed, leaving the streets wet and gleaming, but inside her chest, a different storm raged. She didn't know yet what her answer would be, but she knew one thing for certain: a billionaire had left her a $0 tip, and the note beneath that cup might change not just her life, but the lives of countless families like hers. Or destroy everything she'd fought so hard to protect. Nia spent the entire weekend reading the folder. Every page felt heavier than the last. Budget projections in the millions, architectural plans for mobile health clinics, partnerships with hospitals she'd only seen from bus windows. Legal documents filled with words she had to look up on her phone. Organizational charts with her name positioned at the center, surrounded by specialists, administrators, medical directors. Her name. At the center. The panic started small, then grew until it consumed her. She didn't have a college degree. She'd never managed anything larger than her own shift schedule. What did she know about running a multimillion-dollar initiative? What happened when Lucas Cannon discovered she couldn't do this? When everyone realized he'd made a terrible mistake? But then Alma coughed in the next room, and Nia's resolve hardened. This wasn't about her inadequacy. This was about her daughter's survival. About children like Alma who deserved to breathe without fear. She almost convinced herself it could work. Then the rumors started. Monday morning, The cafe manager pulled her aside before her shift, phone in hand, face troubled. "You need to see this," he said quietly. The headline blazed across a local news blog, *Billionaire Lucas Cannon's mysterious new hire. Single mother and waitress, why her? Her stomach dropped. The article was brief but brutal. It questioned her qualifications, her background, her sudden connection to one of the city's most powerful men. The comment section was worse, strangers speculating about what she'd done to earn such attention, what she'd offered in exchange for opportunity. The insinuations were never explicit, but they didn't need to be. The implication crawled beneath every word like poison. "I'm sorry," the manager said. "People are talking." By Tuesday, the cafe felt different. Customers who'd known her for years now whispered when she approached their tables. Eyes followed her across the floor. A college student she'd always been kind to asked loudly if she was still working here or just slumming it before the big promotion. Laughter rippled through nearby booths. Her face burned, but she kept moving, kept smiling, kept serving. Wednesday morning, the cafe owner called her into his office. He was a good man, kind eyes, gentle voice, but worry creased his forehead. "Nia, I'm not letting you go," he said carefully. "But I need you to know people are asking questions. Uncomfortable questions. About you and Mr. Cannon. About why you're really here." "I've been here for 4 years," she said, her voice tight. "I know. And I believe in you. But the attention." He trailed off, helpless. She nodded, throat burning, and walked out. That afternoon, Alma came home from school crying. Nia found her curled on the couch, small shoulders shaking, face buried in her hands. Panic seized her chest as she knelt beside her daughter. "Baby, what happened? Are you hurt? Can you breathe?" Alma shook her head, gasping between sobs. "The kids at school, they said you did something bad to get money from a rich man." The world tilted. "They said you're a liar and you're gonna leave me when you get rich," Alma continued, her voice breaking. "Did you do something bad, Mama?" Nia pulled her daughter close, tears streaming down her own face now, her heart shattering into pieces so small she didn't know how to gather them back together. "No, baby. No. I didn't do anything bad. I promise." But Alma's question echoed long after she'd fallen asleep. "Did you do something bad? That night, alone in the kitchen, Nia broke. She sat at the table with her head in her hands and cried until her chest ached, until exhaustion replaced everything else. This was supposed to help Alma. Instead, it was destroying her childhood, her innocence, her trust. She grabbed her phone and called Lucas Cannon. He answered on the second ring. "Nia." "I can't do this," she said, her voice raw. "I can't destroy my daughter's life for a job. I'm sorry. I thought I could, but I can't." Silence stretched across the line, not angry, but sad. Heavy with understanding. "I'm sorry too," he said quietly. She hung up before he could say anything else. The relief she expected never came. Only emptiness. The next morning, someone knocked on her apartment door. Nia opened it, exhausted and numb, then froze. Lucas Cannon stood in her modest hallway, completely out of place in his tailored suit, looking somehow smaller here, more human. "May I come in?" he asked gently. She stepped aside, too stunned to refuse. Alma peeked around the corner, eyes wide. Lucas knelt slowly, bringing himself to her level, and pulled a wrapped package from his coat. "Your mother told me you like learning about the stars," he said softly. "I thought you might enjoy this." Alma unwrapped it carefully, a beautiful illustrated science book about constellations, the kind sold in museum gift shops that cost more than Nia made in a week. "Thank you," Alma whispered, clutching it to her chest. Lucas looked up at Nia, then back at Alma. "Your mother is one of the bravest, kindest people I've ever met. If anyone tells you differently, they're wrong. Do you understand?" Alma nodded slowly. He stood, his voice quiet but firm. "The initiative isn't about qualifications on paper, Nia. My sister died because the system failed her. Because no one with power cared enough to see people like her. Children like Alma shouldn't suffer because their parents work hard instead of working rich. His voice cracked slightly on the last words. Nia saw it then, the truth she'd been too afraid to recognize. He wasn't cold. He wasn't calculating. He was grieving. And he'd been grieving for years. One day left to decide, he said quietly, moving toward the door. As he reached the threshold, Alma's small voice stopped him. Mr. Cannon. He turned. If my mama can help other kids like me, she said, hugging her book tightly, why doesn't she? The question hung in the air like a bell that couldn't be unrung. Lucas met Nia's eyes across the small apartment, and something passed between them, understanding, challenge, hope. Then he left. And Nia stood frozen, her daughter's innocent question echoing endlessly in the silence. Nia called Lucas the next morning before fear could change her mind. I'll do it, she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. But I have conditions. A pause. Then, I'm listening. 6-month trial period. If I can't do this, I walk away with no hard feelings. No special treatment for Alma. She gets help through the program like any other child. And I keep 1 shift a week at the cafe. I need to stay grounded. Lucas was quiet for a moment. Agreed. All of it. Then I'm in. Welcome aboard, Ms. Roberts. Her first day at Harbour Point Tower felt like stepping onto another planet. The elevator ride to the 42nd floor stretched endlessly. When she arrived, a conference room full of administrators, medical directors, and policy analysts turned to stare. Their expressions ranged from curious to skeptical to openly dismissive. A woman in designer glasses leaned toward her colleague. That's her. The whisper carried farther than intended. Nia lifted her chin and took her seat at the table. The early weeks were brutal. Every meeting felt like a test she hadn't studied for. Budget terminology she didn't recognize. Medical licensing requirements that made her head spin. Organizational hierarchies that seemed designed to exclude people like her. But Nia had spent years learning things the hard way, and she wasn't about to stop now. She arrived before dawn, stayed past midnight, read everything she could find. When technical language confused her, she asked questions, ignoring the condescending sighs, the eye rolls, the impatience. She used her experience as a mother, as someone who'd navigated the healthcare system from the bottom, to identify gaps the experts had missed. Mobile clinics need evening hours, she said during one meeting. Working parents can't take their kids during the day without losing wages. The medical director frowned. That increases staffing costs significantly. And it actually reaches the people who need help, Nia countered. What's the point of a program nobody can access? Slowly, grudgingly, they listened. 3 months later, the Harbour Youth Wellness Initiative launched its first mobile clinic in Nia's old neighborhood. Families lined up before dawn, mothers clutching sick children, fathers holding crumpled insurance papers, grandparents who'd been turned away from hospitals too many times. Nia stood beside the clinic entrance, greeting each family personally, remembering what it felt like to be them. A young mother emerged an hour later, tears streaming down her face, her son breathing easily for the first time in months. Thank you, she whispered, gripping Nia's hands. Thank you. That night, local news covered the story. The comment section began to shift. Fewer accusations, more curiosity, cautious hope. But not everyone was pleased. 4 months into her trial period, Nia arrived at work to find the executive team gathered in the boardroom, without her. She stopped outside the glass walls, watching them gesture at spreadsheets, faces grim. Lucas's assistant found her standing there. They're voting on whether to continue funding the initiative, he said quietly. Too costly. Too risky. Not profitable enough. Her blood turned cold. They didn't invite me. They don't think you'll understand the financial realities. Nia's jaw tightened. She pushed open the boardroom door. 12 heads turned toward her. The chief financial officer's expression hardened. Ms. Roberts, this is a closed meeting. About a program I run, Nia interrupted, her voice calm but unyielding. So I'm here. She walked to the front of the room, heart hammering, and faced the people who held her work, her hope in their hands. "You're right," she said. "This initiative is expensive. It doesn't generate profit. It never will. But let me tell you what it does generate." She pulled out a phone, scrolling to photos she'd taken over the past months. This is Marcus. 7 years old. His asthma attack sent him to the ER twice a month. His mother worked 3 jobs and still couldn't afford his medication. Today, he plays soccer. This is Eliana. Chronic migraines kept her out of school, so often she was failing 3rd grade. Now she's reading at 5th grade level. This is James. His single father was choosing between insulin and rent. She looked each board member in the eye. "You want to talk about return on investment? These children will grow up healthy. They'll finish school. They'll contribute to this city. They won't end up in emergency rooms costing taxpayers thousands. They won't fall into cycles of poverty because illness destroyed their futures. That's your return." Silence filled the room. "I didn't come from your world," Nia continued, her voice strong now. "I know you see me as a risk. But I also know what it's like to hold my daughter while she fights for breath, to count pennies and still come up short, to feel invisible in a system that wasn't built for people like me. Either you support real change, or I walk. But I won't be a figurehead for something half-hearted." She turned toward the door. "Wait," the CFO said. Nia stopped. "All in favor of continuing full funding?" 12 hands rose. Unanimous. Lucas caught her eye across the table, something like pride flickering in his expression. Later, in his office, he poured 2 glasses of water and handed her one. "You changed more minds in 5 minutes than I have in 10 years, he said quietly. "I just told them the truth." Exactly. 6 months after she'd found the note under a coffee cup, Alma slept peacefully through the night. No wheezing, no panic, no emergency inhaler on the nightstand. Her new medication worked. The specialist visits were helping. She was thriving. Nia stood in her daughter's doorway, watching her breathe easily, and finally allowed herself to hope. On Saturday morning, she kept her promise. She worked her weekly shift at Harborlight Cafe, pouring coffee, clearing tables, listening to the regular stories. A young woman sat alone in the corner booth, exhausted, counting change for her meal. Nia quietly paid her bill and left a $20 tip on the table. The woman looked up, confused. Nia just smiled and walked away. Near closing time, Lucas Cannon entered, took his usual corner seat, and ordered black coffee. He watched Nia move through the cafe with the same grace she'd always carried. Kindness given freely, dignity offered without expectation. Their eyes met across the room. He raised his cup slightly. A quiet acknowledgement. Nia smiled. She realized then that her life hadn't just changed. She'd become the person she needed when she was alone. And now, she could be that person for countless others. The cycle of kindness, unbroken.
Thank you for watching Life in Stories. If this story moved you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs hope today. Your support helps us keep bringing these meaningful tales to life. Tell me in the comments, what would you have done in Nia's place? Until next time.